and welcome back to our tutorial on creating an EDM track using Bandlab. Today we're going to be looking at our final stage in completing our EDM tracks. We've already looked into and inputted drum beats, melodic riffs, chords, bass lines and a mix-in into our track so far, and now we're going to look at how to finish that off. And the final thing we need to think about is the structure of our track, so how it's laid out horizontally, how the music moves, what the story of the song is. So there are 4 different sections that are used in EDM tracks. The first we looked at last time, which is the mix-in, otherwise known as the intro, where new layers are added one by one, and as it says, this builds up to a fuller section with all of the layers. Now we've got 3 more sections which we're going to have a look at today, and these are the breakdown, the build-up and the drop. So the breakdown is really exactly what it says on the tin. It's a sudden thinning of texture where the drums drop out and you have kind of a moment of anticipation what's going to happen next. The build-up is again gradually introducing layers back in. You might use effects to do this, like risers or crash sounds. And typically the kick or the snare patterns, the drum patterns start to kind of increase in complexity and speed to kind of add to this illusion of building up. And finally the drop. This is the main section of the track. It's the energetic high point. It's the bit that everyone remembers and the bit that everybody wants to dance to. So let's head over to Bandlab and have a look. Okay, so I'm in Bandlab now, and this is a version that I have already finished, and you can see that I've got quite a lot of parts in this. At the top we've got my drum machine, chords, bass lines, melodic riffs or tunes, and then down here at the bottom we've got all of these different effects basically, so risers which kind of build the intensity of a section, crashes which kind of show that you've arrived at that section, and I've also got this kind of drop and this impact sound down here which kind of bring it down a little bit for the breakdown. So they're really good for adding an effect, and I'll show you where to find them in a second. So you can see that the track looks quite sectioned as it is already because of the nature of the kind of roller coaster of EDM. We build up, we break down, we build up, we break down. So I'll talk you through and then we'll have a quick listen. The first section is the mix-in. We start with the chords, then the drum machine and the bass line come in, but just the root note bass line, so quite simple. Then a bass riff, and then the rhythmic chords, and then finally the melodic riff comes in, and this is kind of really our first drop, I suppose, our first main section where everything is happening, and this is emphasised by 2 risers and a crash sound. Then we have our breakdown section, and you can see the drums drop out here, so we've got no drums, no rhythmic chords, no root note bass line, just the bass riff and the sustained chords to start. Then the drums will come in. This is just a kick pattern, kick and snare, and then finally the full complex drums, and everything comes back in. So this is the breakdown and then the build up, and again this is emphasised by our use of the impact sound, and then of course the risers as well. I've also added a melodic riff here. It says copy. This is a slightly different, slightly softer timbre, slightly softer sound than the one in the main drop. So we build up again by adding stuff in, and then we're back here in our drop section. Then another breakdown, another build-up, another drop, and then I added a bit of an outro to the end of this. And you'll see also if I click on this button here, I've added a bit of volume automation into this track. So you can basically play around with this line which indicates the volume of each of your tracks, and you can see that I've got some build-ups, and I have, for example, here, and I've also got some sudden drops or some fades in there to add effect again as well. So let's have a little listen to how this sounds. we go. So 3 minutes pretty much of EDM, a roller coaster with lots of build-ups and lots of breakdowns in there. So let's zoom over into our previous save, our mixin, and see how exactly we created this. Okay, so here's the mix-in from before with all of the parts in there that I needed. You'll notice there's a few effects missing off the bottom there because I chose to add them all in later. So we'd already got our mix-in section, and then this was kind of our first drop. And the first thing that I actually did was I just made that drop an extra 4 bars. It sounded better if it was slightly longer and gave us more time to get used to the song, really. So let's just drag all of that out. You'll see I'm using the loop button here to make sure that that is nice and long and all the same length. Okay, and I might even add in maybe a repeat of some of these as well, just for effect. There we go. So those 2 rises I've dragged out as well. So we've got so far the mix-in, which is a build-up, and the first drop, which is the main section. So what we need to do now is we need to come out into a breakdown section. And what we're not going to use is we're not going to have the drums at all. They're going to drop out. Now I made the decision that the rhythmic chords were a bit too much. The melodic riff again was a bit too much, but the sustain chords and the bass riff sound quite nice, quite mellow together. So I'm going to drag those out again and add to this. There we go. Now, if you wanted to make this a really clear division so that you could just copy this loop again, you can, moving your playback bar here. I could come and press, oh, it's not going to work for me now. Oh, wait, I can do it on here. I click on the track that I want, and I could press this button here, which says Slice at Playhead, and that will just split that into 2 parts. So if I ever want to specifically copy just 2 bars of the loop, then I can. So there's my bass riff and my sustain chords. Now I feel like I want to add another effect here, and the effect that I'm going to be after is I'm going to be after one of these impact sounds that kind of sounds like we're coming away, like we're breaking down basically. So I'm going to click on the loop pack, and last time we used the loop pack we searched for EDM, and I think this time I'm going to try Mega Pack 2, and I'm actually going to filter this out a bit by going straight for FX. Now I don't want a riser because that's a bit too much. Perhaps a stutter drop would be quite good. Let's have a listen to that. Yeah, I quite like that. It sounds like it's fading away into the distance. So I'm going to drag that into our track, and I'm going to importantly make sure that it's nice and lined up. Let's just have a quick listen to that in place. Oh, nothing. Oh, there we go. I've got the volume on 0. Okay, let's listen to that in place now. I feel like that needs to be looped as well, so we get that twice, that kind of fading into the background sound. So there's our breakdown, quite simple. We've dropped the drums out, we've dropped out all of the kind of crazy rhythmic parts, and now we've just got those 2 tiny little sections. Now something else that I did just to add a kind of calmer feel in my other track was I created this this different melodic riff. So it's exactly the same thing, I've copied it, but I've just added a different sound to it to make it sound a bit, you know, softer for this break, a bit different as well. There we go. So let's just check which sound I used for that. Eyelash synth. Okay, so the way that I did that, if you wanted to do the same, was I clicked the 3 dots on my original melodic riff track, and I clicked duplicate track. There you go. Now I've got 2 of exactly the same thing, except I don't want them at the same time, so I'm just going to drag this new one to where I want it, which is going to be here. But this sound that I've got on at the moment is the same as this one, so it's far too extreme for the breakdown section. So to change it, I'm going to click on Instrument, and then I'm just going to pick a new sound, and I went quite simply for Eyelash Synth, which is there. You could play through and decide what you liked the sound of best. So let me just drag these out for a bit more so that we can hear that melodic riff in there. So an awful lot of listening and deciding what you most like the sound of in this process. So there's our breakdown, complete with a slightly different melodic riff and a drop sound, and now we need the build up. So I'm going to start building up possibly about here on bar 4, and I'm going to start with a drum machine, but I don't think I'm going to keep the same drum machine as before, because this is the beat that was playing just, and you can see it's quite complex, and this is the simpler beat, but I think I want to break it down even more and just have the kick drum part. So I'm going to click on C and quite simply write that in, and then click add C and drag it out. Nice and simple. And then for the next step, I think I want to do another one, and I want to have just the kick drum and the snare. So let's add that in. And then finally, in our build up, I think that my drum part is going to go back to normal. So I'm going to go back and find my part from before that I like the most and add that in. There we go. So that's the drum part, and you should hear it kind of build up a little bit as we go through. Let's just drag these out to match. Okay, and I think by then we're going to be back with our drop. So by bar 49, I think we're going to have finished our build up. So let me just, in fact, no, I'll save that for just a minute. So let's just finish off this little build up, knowing that I'm aiming for bar 49. I think I'm going to add in the bass line. So let's just copy that, and when I click paste, or Control V, I'm doing Control and C for copy on my keyboard, and then Control and V to paste. It will paste the entire thing and talk about automation, which is the volume data. Now I'm going to say don't paste the automation data, because I can change that around when I want to later. Okay, and I'm going to do the same for my chords, and I think I'm probably going to add them at about the same point. And again, don't take that automation data. Maybe actually I'll add this bass line a little bit earlier. I'll add it here. And you can see again, I'm building up by step, aren't I? Adding parts in bit by bit. So let's just hear this breakdown and this start of a build-up. We should be back at the main section. Now I think that sounds pretty good. I am going to drag over in a second a couple of those riser sounds to kind of emphasize, but I'm quite happy with that as we go. I am also going to add in a little bit of automation here on the parts so that they don't come in quite so roughly, really. Okay, let's just check this. I'm just going to drag the sound of my chords down a bit and then make it so that they are building up throughout. I'll leave my bass as it is, but my bass line I'm going to do a little bit of a crescendo as it comes in. I just quite like this idea of parts coming in ever so quietly and then building up. And suddenly people going, oh, yeah, the drums are back in, and noticing them. Not that that's what people will do in a club, but, you know, so that's now some volume automation in there, some build-ups added. So that is how to create a breakdown and a build-up section. And now my final quick cheat is how to get this original drop, which is where we were aiming for, and put it back over here. Now the first thing that I'm going to have to do is move my playback device, and I am just going to have to chop everything at this part. So I'm going to click again, slice at playhead for every one of my parts, and this just means that I can copy just that bit on its own. So that's now all there, like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste it. So I'm going to highlight everything. Might accidentally highlight some of the other stuff as well. That's okay for now. So click Control and C, and then importantly move my playhead to where I want it to be. I think I wanted it to go here, and click Control and V. And don't paste the automation data. Oh yeah, I've accidentally copied two parts that I didn't need, so let's just get rid of them for a second. Check that I've got all of the risers. I have, fantastic. So I've now got mix in, drop, breakdown, build up, and another drop here. And then in my previous track, I did have another, here we go, that's where we've got to. I did have another breakdown and drop, copied and pasted, changed a few things, and then I thought about an outro by taking things away bit by bit. I also added a few more effects and played around with them a little bit more to kind of enhance where I wanted people to hear certain things. But that is basically the background to how to create a structure within your EDM track, including a breakdown, a build-up, and a drop section. It really is about listening and deciding what you like the sound of, when it feels right to build up for you, when it feels like it's the right moment to have a drop. But the general structure tends to be build up, breakdown, drop, as many times as you want, really. Don't forget that the most important thing is to add a little bit of contrast in there to make, you know, the people that are there dancing feel the anticipation and the build-up and really enjoy your track. So have a go at using as many effects, that's the word, as many effects as you want. Have a go at duplicating tracks and putting different timbres on them. Have a go at just copying and pasting and cutting and using whatever you want, whenever you want. And then you should end up with an EDM track that you are ready to click save on, importantly, but also that you're ready to click file, download and mix down as your first EDM track. I hope that you've enjoyed our tutorial series, and I look forward to hearing what you make. Bye!